Welcome, my darlings and viewers. I am joined today by Skari, all the way from Canada, except he's still in Canada because we have modern technology here in the castle, which isn't necessarily a castle.
It is. It is a castle, and anybody who thinks otherwise doesn't know architecture. Just saying.
Absolutely. Skari is known as Archon Skari and is one of, if not the best Dark Eldar players in the world. And we say Dark Eldar because I'm old enough to know when Dark Eldar were called Dark Eldar and not Drukhari.
The proper way.
Yes, the old and proper and good way. I know you also have Black Templars, which tells me that you started playing in 3rd edition.
I know. I've got some on my paint table. I'm just about to start a little crusade with them soon, which is very exciting, using the new Maelstrom book series.
Yes. So is that Crusade or is that just a campaign supplement?
I think there's like 10 to 12 missions you can play. They're more match play focused with a couple of flavorful things, but you can always play them with Crusade. They don't have specific Crusade battle honors or anything for the campaign. Thinking.
If there isn't like, oh, you got a table so you can upgrade people with Crusade benefits.
You just use your Crusade book, right? Like in your codex, you just use your Crusade rules.
Okay, very good. We also have new things, new elves, space elves, Eldar Corsairs. How do you feel about Eldar Corsairs generally and as part of, like, Dark Eldar? Because you can include the Ancathari.
Anthrite?
That's the one.
Yeah, Anthrite. Well, it's fun because, I'm an old timer, so anybody who has played long enough will remember that Imperial Armor had an entire, couple of books dedicated to, Corsairs. Was it the Doom of Mimera?
Yes.
And in that sort of supplement, that's our old campaign supplements, you could build entire armies of Corsairs, pirates, and they were mixed with Dark Eldar, pirate Corsairs. It's the first instance of a venom, or back when Corsairs could take venoms, and they could take venoms equipped with, I think, shuriken cannons and multi-lasers and stuff. You could equip the venoms with different gear, which is a very fun conversion opportunity. I'm very excited the Corsairs are back. You don't know
there
what
we go.
there we go.
There. Ah, very nice.
They haven't fleshed them out enough, but they're almost to the power of Harlequins now, right? You've got a jump pack unit.
That's not exactly the most fleshed out sub-faction either. But yeah.
Correct. An elite unit, a battle line unit, a couple of mainstay characters. You've got the Psyker and Iriel, or the Prince, right?
Yep.
And then you have the jetpack guys and the little
gunboat. Yes, the not Viper.
The not Viper, but Viper. I love that little gunboat, by the way. I think it's like a little angry Ravager, right? And you take two of them, and they're basically just little angry Ravagers.
That's a good way to describe them. Yeah. I didn't like how the bottom of the turret of the Venom, you can see the person's feet sticking out the bottom. It just looks like they only half built the model.
That's very funny. I haven't actually built it yet, but I will
when you
be
get to it, you'll see
soon.
on the side that
I'll probably end up putting a canopy over the bottom or something. I'll convert it to make it my own.
It's the same thing as the Rogel Dawn tank. It doesn't have a bottom on the hull. Most of the time you won't notice it, but there are times when you would.
Great for snack holding. Snacks.
Yeah. When it's destroyed, absolutely.
That's right, absolutely.
Right. Now, Skari is one of the very top-tier competitive players, but I didn't drag him here to talk about competitions and competitiveness as much. I wanted to get him in to talk about Crusade, casual games, and how Crusade, especially being fun, can prepare you for tournament games if you were a tournament player and don't want to just go, Crusade, fun things. Don't like fun things.
I agree. I was having this conversation earlier today amongst a highly competitive group of folks. And I agree. I think we'll talk about it in more depth, but Crusade has a lot of different facets.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I was thinking was the missions. So Crusade missions can be quite different, and they are potentially very skewed. So objective markers might end up on one side of the board, so the defender is more of the defender. And when I'm saying Crusade, I'm talking separate to even the asymmetric missions, which are distinctly attacker and defender, with the attacker always going first. How do you feel that helps, say, a competitive person to learn the game better?
Well, I think as a competitive player, playing asymmetric missions in general, whether it's a Crusade mission, using the asymmetric missions from the chapter-approved card pack, or even bunker missions from the White Dwarfs.
Yeah,
right?
I do like that.
That have like a variety of different things that they basically throw a wrench in the pan and go, look, real battles in, war, and not exactly played on even playing fields. They're always asymmetric. And what it allows me to do as a competitive player is a couple of different things. One, problem solve when things aren't looking in your favor, right? Sometimes you have to make do with half of your army against a much larger force until reserves arrive. So how do you use terrain to your advantage? How do you use every unit you have to its maximum capability, from knowing what to shoot at to when to sacrifice it, to run away and hide, that sort of thing. And secondly, it does something which I think is very important, which is forces you to read the mission, which I think is something that even competitive players don't do, right?
It's so often I get to like tournament games and it's like, oh, okay, we're in the final game, we get to the last turn, and they're like, hang on, how does burning objectives work? When can I score victory points on that?
Correct. And I think that, getting into the habit of reading because you have no idea what it does, but then understanding what the mission is. Because some of them, like recently we played a campaign, or we're playing a campaign at Mini Wargaming, and I got to play sort of like the antagonist. And a couple of things. Number one, I got to play a faction I don't really get to play very often, but I love, which is the Adeptus Mechanicus. Number two, I got to play a detachment that isn't necessarily the most competitive detachment, but I enjoy playing these other detachments because they add some flavor to the story, but it also gives me a lot of valuable information if I ever run into that obscure detachment in a tournament setting.
Well,
So it
unusual things can just throw you off. If you're like, oh, okay, everyone's got Victrix Guard and Catan spam, and then you come up against, I don't know, a horde of Gene Stealer cult. How do you deal with the Xeno Creed if that's not what you're geared towards?
It's like everybody's is planning for, a Gladius Space Marines, right?
Yeah.
But what if you run into something that isn't Gladius Space Marines at all? It's a Salamander Flamer detachment or something. You're like, oh, okay, well, what that makes Flamers better, right? You would hope. And then the last thing is, a lot of these missions that we played were from the Pariah Nexus Crusade mission pack. And some of those missions are very unique. They have like very unique scoring, or when you can do stuff like, you can only score an objective if you didn't hold it, or you can only flip an objective, like turn the switch on and off, do the action, only if you didn't control the objective at the start of a turn, and only if you like moved into it during the movement phase and then flip the switch, right? Whereas if you just held it, you couldn't flip the switch, right? It's just like little unique wording things that can just change how you have to think about missions and timing.
Those are the things where I think, hang on, was that maybe a mistake on Games Workshop's part? Didn't mean that, but play it as it is, then it's different. Often just the objectives being in a different place. Like one of the Leviathan missions has a defender with 3 objectives, and you have to take them as the attacker. That situation could come up in a competitive manner. Like, okay, my opponent has amazing first turn infiltration. How do I deal with that if that were to come up, as well as being a fun mission itself?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how do I deal with it? Who goes first, who goes second?
Yeah.
One of the missions was you do not get your command point at the start of the turn if you don't control one of the objectives in no man's land, right? Little things like that can just like throw a wrench in what you consider normal Warhammer. So how do you adapt
as an army
and overcome
without command points?
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. There are some fun ones in the White Dwarf Bunker missions as well. 521 that just came out. There's an avalanche that destroys objectives from the left to the right side of the board. So it's like supply drop, but also you lose a section of the table along with the objective. For the player going second, you have to learn which units you want to sacrifice in order to score those objectives and get the victory points.
Fantastic. That reminds me of the old, not a terraforming thing, but there was an old version of that, which was back in 3rd edition, where they had environmental hazards.
Yeah. Oh, I do remember that. That is going back. I do remember that. There's a lot of fun things.
I actually use them for campaigns that I run all the time, because I love running campaigns and crusades. I'm just coming off of running a 10-week-long Vogan campaign for my local game store.
All right.
Where I rewrote all of the old Cities of Death missions from 3rd edition, and made all of these new players play old missions, but with 10th edition. Taught them how to build a good, like I did a step-by-step on how to set up a good Cities of Death table, going back and forth, using like the 4th edition style of like putting a ruin down one at a time within 3 to 6 inches of each other, and just making sure there's like 10 to 15 ruins on the board. And then all the way to quite literally missions being, you have to hold this building, and if nobody holds this building, then you fight to the death until there's only one person standing in this building, which was very fun. And it just kind of isn't something you see nowadays very often.
No, it's a lot of, okay, if we're doing terrain, it's tournament terrain, which is quite dense. You've got, how many ruins is the average? Like 8 to 10?
10 ruin sections, of course, depending on the positioning. The key is if you want to, you can do the same thing. Like you could literally run the GW footprints. So just have like, or even UKTC footprints, like have the same amount of ruins, but just make sure that instead of having set layouts, you just, each person picks a ruin and puts it within 3 to 6 inches of another ruin, and it just builds a city, right? From like a dense core towards the outskirts. And then you can kind of flip the ruins however you want, so the walls are in certain areas depending on if you need space to move a tank through or whatever. And you just kind of like create your own little, with like little roads and alleyways and things, which I think is really a great way of doing it.
When I'm playing more casually and we're not using tournament terrain, which I generally avoid, it's things like, does the battle map have roads on it? Okay, you don't place ruins on a road. Then you build a city semi-organically from that. Or just having a thing in the table quarter, but not necessarily lined up as it would be, oh, it has to be 12 inches from the board edge. And the slight variations in where the terrain is means that every game feels different. I've made boards where I have all of the city terrain on one side, and the other side has no ruins, only craters and trees. And then you have the city that your infantry can fight in, and the tanks are going to be better on the plains. Or I've had boards which only have woods and solid buildings you can't enter. How do you cope when the board is not ruins? Whereas if you're playing at a tournament and they're using the same terrain layout in every single board, it can get a bit stale by like game 3.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's very fun to do that. But as a competitive player, you know, I love having to think outside the box. And I think it irritates competitive players to no end, because competitive players like living inside this little box that they consider
the real 40K.
Well, not necessarily real, but like balanced.
Right, okay.
You know, here's a news flash. Nothing is balanced, right? There's an ebb and flow to even the meta, what people run, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't change. What changes is your ability to adapt to change, right? Folks get so caught up in, like, when there's a codex change or an edition change, they get so caught up in the negative think tank of, oh no, like the end of the world is nigh, where that's like so far-fetched from, you know, just learning how, well, now this is the parameter we have to work within, so why don't you learn how to adapt within that parameter quickly instead of fighting the fact that that's the new parameter, right? Is the energy can just be spent elsewhere.
Yes, like painting more models or making sure your models... I think more people get annoyed at like some options for weapons not being available. A lot of these models at the start of the edition could have TLC. Now you can't have twin lightning claws on so many characters.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But it's one of the reasons that I play one army competitively a lot, which is the Drukhari Dark Eldar, right? I've got my Black Templars, but I'm a collector. So over 10, 15 years, 20 years I've been playing the game, I've been, you know, collecting a little bit everything, which allows me to then pivot very easily from one thing to another based on what the meta comes and brings. And it allows me to build and paint new units more effectively.
To have a good 2,000 point army, you need 2,500 points worth of stuff.
Correct. And you know, instead of like a meta chaser that would say, oh, okay, well, Land Raiders and Custodian Guard are very good right now, so let's just buy 15 Custodian Guard and 3 Land Raiders and build and paint them in like 30 seconds so they look like crap. Now I'm just going to go and play tournaments. And then the next balance update comes up 3 weeks later, and they're like, okay, so that's not a list you can really do anymore because you lose a whole Land Raider. And they're like, oh, no. And you're like, well, you're the one that decided to just dive in and spend, you know, a bunch of money on this random stuff that is, you're just chasing, you're just chasing the ups and downs. Like, so you can either be okay with it or stop complaining.
This is where I like to teach people, pick a detachment you like. The more you play the detachment, the more you will find out like how it works and the good things of it. And then you'll have a play style that's different to what other people have. I have been getting even more into the Xenocrete because I'm doing a whole thing for January, which was meant to be January, but now it's February. So I'm doing all the detachments in February. And I've been playing Xenocrete a lot more, which is very unpopular competitively. And I'm just now realizing neophytes that get very little benefit from the detachment are very, very good at just clogging up the board in the last few turns. And I wouldn't have found that and wouldn't be able to win as much with it if I hadn't just kept playing that detachment, which is a fun detachment. It's the Advance and Charge Horde detachment. So nice.
Yeah. Like me personally, like I run, like I can play Gladius, but to be honest, playing the competitive stuff for me doesn't really do anything for me mentally or personally. Like I love thinking outside the box and expanding my knowledge of Warhammer in general. And the way to expand my knowledge is to try different things. I have a Hammerfall bunker on my hobby table.
Okay, good. There's one
Just
detachment that can help with that now. You can deep strike
it's
it finally.
It's a Hammerfall bunker. I'm playing 200 points down. Okay, let's just make that clear right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very excited to try win a little event with it. So let's just say I'm trying it out. And I'm building my drop pods, my Hammerfall bunker, and a 5-strike servo turret.
Yeah, okay,
Let's just say I'm going all in on this.
Are you using all of them in one?
Process.
Because that's more of a penalty.
100%.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Best
challenge
of luck
accepted. Thank
you. Yeah, I do like trying things out. I tried the Bastion Task Force. I just had lots of Deathwatch veterans, just an army of Deathwatch veterans that can all advance and charge because they're all battle line. And it went quite well. I can see what it does. It was very different to the Black Spear Task Force, which is all about teleporting around. Yeah. You learn more things. And with Crusade, especially when you can say, add an enhancement to something and, oh, this unit suddenly gets lethal hits. And that makes it so much better. Is there any way I can get lethal hits on this unit somewhere in the codex? That's the sort of thing you then start to look for.
Yep, exactly.
Pick up trends before other people.
Yeah, well, you can go meta, counter meta. And it's one of the reasons I love Crusade as well, like going back to the main topic. I tend to find uses for units that folks don't find uses for at a meta level, and then finding a way to play that like random enhancement on your character or a unit that you don't really see very often. And because you get to play them and you just get to know what they can do. So then you put them in your list because you like what they do rather than what someone on a soapbox is telling you that the unit can or cannot do or is worth it or is not worth it, right?
Tier list problems,
Correct. There's like the tier list is what you make it. And then one of the things I like to say, you know, when I'm coaching folks or when I'm giving advice, I make meta. Me. I make the meta, right? So if you want to be a person who plays competitively, why not think like that? Why not think that you're the person that wants to make meta? And if you make it the meta, then that's what the meta is. Nobody can tell you what the meta is, right? It takes a certain level of determination and playing games, but a lot of the times you find those crazy combinations in casual, friendly games and crusades and in times where you like practice games where you're not worried about the result of the game. You can really find diamonds in the rough that way.
I keep encouraging people to take the units that they like because the more you use them, the more you think about them, the better you get. When I'm doing coaching, people will say, I like this unit. How do I make this unit good? Maybe not Centurions, but maybe it isn't meta to have 60 Battle Sisters. But how many opponents can actually cope with 60 Battle Sisters? And Crusade is so much fun. Play all the detachments, see what they can do, rather than sticking to just one, because you can change detachment every time. You can mix enhancements between one detachment to another. That's great.
I love it. It just allows you to really kind of get a feel for it, right? And that alone, like even if you're a competitive player that, you know, wants to try this out, like letting your opponents get all the crazy Crusade stuff and you sticking to just a basic Crusade, like a competitive list, right? And your opponent's units get all the crazy bonuses and upgrades and whatnot. It's a good test of your mettle, right? How can you use your competitive list against things like Demon Prince that become nigh unkillable and come back to life and, you know, ignore invulnerable saves and do all this crazy stuff, right? Where like, you know, how do you deal with that stuff, right? And I like that challenge.
One thing I've found is you never know all of 40k. You'll come up against some army, they'll be playing a detachment you weren't expecting, they'll use a tactic you don't know about or a stratagem, and you're like, that's thrown me off completely because I wasn't able to adapt. So yeah, playing against crazy Crusade things is good.
I agree.
I'm thinking the same thing about Legends units, where it's like a similar unit, but then it's a bit different or has some new ability or something you weren't expecting. Now,
Yep.
you said you haven't played with the Drukhari Legends units, at least not since they moved from the Index to the Codex /
I know, guilty as charged.
terrible.
However, I find it very funny that the Legends units for the Drukhari, the Dark Eldar, are, in Legend form, way better than they were in Index form.
Yeah, it seems like they
Which
got a
is like-
bonus and a boost, but then maybe someone didn't tell them that their models are being discontinued.
Like my Beast Pack gets
Yeah.
reroll hits and wounds, right? I'm like, why didn't I have that in the Index? Like, you wrote it, you made a card for it.
Mhm.
Why didn't you just let me have that for 6 months to a year? Why? Why not? You know, grotesques are fantastic. Twin linked weapons, you know, things like that. They can get really punchy. I wish I would have had that. But I play enough Crusade that I will get to use these. They're on my Legend shelf on my display cabinet. I have a shelf of all Legends. I've got my Beast Packs. I've got the Court of the Archon.
Yeah.
I've got, just the old things that I have up there. And I can't wait to sort of like put them on the table.
What other old things are there? Like, have we got like a Dracon on a bike? I'm trying to think of some of the old units that don't exist
something
anymore.
that we can do now, right? That's
Mhm.
awesome. I actually converted a Archon on a bike or a character on a jet bike to play 4th and 3rd and 4th and 5th
Yeah.
edition with. But now I actually, with the Crucible of Champions, get to run like a
Yeah.
succubus on a bike with a incubi clave, which is amazing. I can't wait to run that just for funsies, and I've already built the model, so it's fantastic.
That's the best thing. And it says you should build the model and show off the weapons and whatnot, so it's proper. Otherwise, it is just theory hammer. And it's like, this Dreadnought, pretend it's a super amazing Dreadnought. But I like the idea of building your own characters. It's really popular as like a topic of discussion. And now we have some rules for it. And now you can make things that are overpowered somewhat if you're willing to pay the points for it. I'm hoping that Games Workshop might do something more like that in 11th edition, either expand on that or have points per weapon back for certain weapons.
Exactly, which I think is, out of all of the things that you've seen in the Crucible stuff, what's the stuff that you are enjoying the most?
It's probably where we get a character that we hadn't had before. For example, a character that can lead Paragon Warsuits who isn't Morven
Nice.
Val.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. With the Black Templars, there's a couple of cool characters, but I really like the idea of like a venerable Redemptor Dreadnought
Yeah.
with the Wisdom of the Ancients aura, which is like an aura that goes back to like 3rd edition or 4th edition. They would guide all the Space Marines around them with their wisdom. So reroll like 1s to wound and 1s to hit or something, or 1s
For
to
this
hit.
one, I think
Anyway,
it's just reroll
it's
hit
like
rolls
really
of 1.
cool.
It's the same as
Which
the
is awesome.
current Venerable Dreadnought, which is called the
But
Dreadnought.
as a Black Templar,
Mhm.
Templar, right? The fact that I don't get rerolls, it's cool to have that built in, right?
Oh,
Which is
yes, because there's no Oath of Moment now?
neat. Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Not for, like, we have our, like, okay, Repulsor Executioners or, and Castellans in close combat. Okay, there's ways to get rerolls. As we know, Games Workshop tried to make this edition less hilly and less rerolls, right? But we'll
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
We'll see.
Well, I suppose what they did with that is the aura that used to come from a 9th edition character for all the units within 6 inches is now localized within 1 unit. Mostly.
Correct. Reroll hits and wounds, right? Good old Oath of Moment or whatever. Oh my goodness. Oh no, Gulliman rerolls. I think that's what that was.
Yeah, Index
insane.
Oath of Moment was full rerolls to hit and wound. Otherwise, you're using Stern Guard.
Yep. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I like it. It makes there's lots of cool combinations. Let us know in the comments. Like, have you played Crusade? Do you like the option? Have you done it often? Have you tried or thought about it? Or do you just not like it because you like and prefer just what you call balance?
It might not be the balance of it. It might just be the idea of basic 40k. We want to have a basic 40k. If you're playing one game a month.
What is basic? Now we're getting into the philosophy.
Oh,
of
well,
what
yeah.
is basic 40k. Like, what is basic 40k?
That's
Is it
probably the most
1,000 points,
common
1,500
one.
points, 2,000 points?
Well, if you're going off the rulebook, it's 1,000 or 2,000. I don't think there is a
Correct.
basic points level, but the rulebook suggests one of those two as the norm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then if you're thinking of a game,
up to those point values, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
I know,
people
I
just
know.
People take it at like gospel, right? They go, 1,000 points or 2,000 points, nothing in between.
No, I play a lot of 1,500
Right.
points.
I love 1,500. 1,500 points, by the way, is like the best point level, and I will die on that hill.
I'm with you on that hill. I don't know if I'll die with you, but I'm on that hill.
I will die on that hill defending 1500 points is the best point level. I think it makes the most balanced, fun games of Warhammer you will ever play on like your traditional, like,
6x4
by 6x4 /
traditional
almost
has been around for 2
table.
editions. But
Correct.
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Otherwise, normal 40k might be considered using the mission pack if you can get the mission pack.
Yeah.
The current cards, and then you play one of them, but then you probably want to follow the rules of the mission pack, but then people don't want to do asymmetric missions because they're not normal, or they don't want to use twists. I was fine with twists. They're mostly okay unless you draw one that's like, my World Data opponent is going to have 3d6 charges. That's not so fun.
But then you could also play against your Tau opponent and be like, nobody can shoot anything outside of 12 or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Or so 18 inches.
There's some, or 18. It's you have both sides of the coin, with that sort of thing.
Yeah, it feels awkward if you're like, I am maybe going to lose this based on a card draw.
But at the same time, you can. That's the thing. You draw it and go, this isn't going to be fun, and then you just don't use that one.
That's what I'm saying. Skip that card.
You can just do something else.
Card.
You can do whatever you want. You know that this game is made up by people, so you can make things up as you play.
As I tell people, every rule is an optional rule.
Correct.
Yeah, from terrain layouts, from the way the objectives are placed, because even some of the maps, we didn't have them maps at the start of the edition. Those are new things that someone made up. Yeah. Or you can play bunker missions. Yeah, there's so many ways to play.
I like it.
Don't limit yourself to just competitive games using the tournament pack. But if you did think, I just want to play competitive tournament modes, play the other game systems, because that can help make you a better player for those games.
I agree.
I think that's the
a great way of looking at
video.
It. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And with that, make sure you go forth and roll some dice. And at the end of the day, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
Mm-hmm. They did get rid of that most important rule in the 10th edition core rules. I don't think they have that. Whereas they did in like 9th and 8th and all the previous ones for a while. The most important rule is to have fun.
And that was after they switched it from the most important rule is roll off, which was terrible.
Right. Yeah.
I think that was a thing for a while.
Argue your point for a bit and then roll a dice.
And then roll. Yeah, no, that didn't work.
Yeah. Drag a friend in, get them to decide for you, or tournament organizer, whichever one.
Yep. Yeah.
Good.
Thanks a lot for having me. This was really fun.
I hope you do well at your next event, both casually, both crusadily, and competitively.
Love it.
Have a good day.
Have a great afternoon or evening now. Bye.
And if you want to hear me talk more about Crusade with someone else who has a different idea on terrain and crusades and the acceptability of centurions, this is the video for you to continue this chat. Have a great day of 40k.